Good evening, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, feds and degenerates, cuckolds of all ages. Welcome to Mild's Culture Plate. I am your host, Mild Kevin Miles, and it is Thursday, Steak and Blowjob Day, March 14th, also known as Pi Day to some of you math nerds. We have an interesting show for you tonight. This is, let me just do this here real quick, a Patriot Philosopher Special. If you haven't been here for a Patriot Philosopher Special before, it's where I take certain words, certain concepts, and try to do a deep dive into the true meaning. And when I mean true meaning, not just the definition, but the impact of certain words and certain concepts on the greater society as a whole. And examine, what this really means for us, especially in the 21st century, especially in 2024. What these certain concepts have to do with impacting your day-to-day life and your experience in the society around you. And I tend to turn the lights down low. We just got the Batman light behind me and my monitor and my little cam light. Tends to make me a little shiny, so ignore that. Usually also when I do these Patriot Philosopher streams, I try not to drink as much. I think I have before on a couple of them, but I tend to say, the whiskey helps me rant, and it definitely does. And these are rant heavy streams, but I also need to follow a stream of thought from topic to topic to topic, and the whiskey kind of hinders that a little bit. So I won't be drinking whiskey today, but if you chat, if you type something in the chat, if you type hello, like Demon's Wrath did almost an hour ago over on Rumble, you say hello to me in the chat, you will get a shout out. I tend to try to display most of the relevant comments that are relevant to the conversations we have on the show. I try to show those on screen like I just did. So yeah, you want your comment on screen, you want your thoughts put out there, you want to add to the discussion, please join us in the chat. We're over on Rumble and YouTube and on X. So feel free to join us on any of those platforms. And normally this show is a clip and commentary show about current events. And normally this show airs on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 6 p.m. Today is a special edition. I tend to try to do these at least once a month. I normally do them around holidays. I haven't done a holiday stream in a while. Last week I did the State of the Union roast. Feel free to look that up. But this week I decided to give you folks a little treat by examining the concept of shame. Now, usually these Patriot Philosopher streams happen because I've had a topic on my mind for a while, and I've had a certain perspective on it that I'm really marinating in my brain, this certain perspective on it. And I start to notice things as I'm walking through my day-to-day life that perfectly fall within exactly the concept I'm thinking about. And as I gather more and more anecdotal examples, then I try to look at some of the more educational examples. I try to see what the internet has to say about these things. Um, with the topic of shame, there's not a whole lot of productive content out there. I mean, we're definitely going to be looking at some examples of certain kinds of behavior, some examples of certain kinds of and we're going to be looking a lot at the definition of these words, and then I'm going to be kind of ruminating on what those definitions mean for the greater society. Um, I don't know. I guess I'm setting this up a little too much. I guess I'm giving you a little too much explanation and not enough actual content. But yes, tonight we are going to be talking about the concept of shame. It's going to be a little different than most other of my Patriot Philosopher streams in that, some of those are heavy on the rant and heavy on the data and heavy on the examples. But I don't think you need examples of shameful behavior. I don't think you need examples of what a person shaming another person looks like. I think it's pretty self explanatory. I think most people already know exactly what shame is, exactly why it's there, but we're gonna talk a little bit about it. And I definitely would like some feedback from those of you in the chat as we delve into these topics. I've got a little PowerPoint to help me out. Uh, I haven't used PowerPoint before, so forgive me. Let's do this. Let's bring this up here. Okay. Let me take my banner down because it's okay. There we go. So, welcome to my presentation on shame and dignity. And as you can see, here we have an individual. Here on the title page, we have an individual who, is twerking in the dairy section of their grocery store because this is what society has become. This is what society has become. There's certain behaviors, wrong time, wrong place. There's plenty of great places to twerk, plenty of great times to twerk. You know, yes, is twerking a shameful behavior to some degree? There most twerking, I would say most twerking is pretty fucking shameful. But you know what? I'm also not a Puritan. I'm also not a person that believes all dancing needs to be banned. I'm not, and this is kind of part of the conversation we're having is learning the cues. We are social beings, but again, as I've said over and over again on this show, our online culture, right? Our ability to sit in our houses and get food delivered to us, to get products delivered to us, our ability to isolate ourselves from the culture as a whole and only socialize and only dip into what is considered a polite public society when we absolutely have to is starting to slowly make our culture how to forget making our culture forget how to behave. So let me go into this. Let's get into the definitions here. Okay, so here we have the Google dictionary for shame and dignity. And one thing I want to let's see. Where's my pen? Okay, one thing I want to point out here. Okay. So here we go. So we got shame, noun shame, a painful feeling of humiliation or distress caused by the consciousness of wrong or foolish behavior. And then similar, a loss of respect, esteem, or dishonor used to reprove someone for something of which they should be ashamed, and a regrettable or unfortunate situation or action. And then down here we have a person, action, or situation that brings a loss of respect or honor. And then so let's go on down to the verb because I want to bring this verb thing in later, but it's important to know what their definition of the verb shaming. So we got the shame verb shaming. To bring shame to, or to cause someone to feel ashamed or inadequate by outdoing or surpassing them. And actually, nowadays, colloquially, you could just kind of chop off the outdoing or surpassing. It's just to cause someone to feel ashamed or inadequate, right? Because colloquially, if you slut shame someone or fat shame one, you're making them feel shameful. You're causing them to feel ashamed. Now let's look at dignity. And I kind of consider dignity sort of the opposite of shame. Like if your behavior doesn't make you feel shame, then your behavior could possibly be making you feel dignified. It's dignity, a state of quality or being worthy of honor or respect, a composed or serious manner or style, a sense of pride in oneself, self respect, a high or honorable rank or position. Okay, we're not worried about the high or honorable rank, right? Because they're talking about dignitaries, they're talking about politicians. Oh, we got Sanglant86 over in the comments saying yo over on Rumble. Okay, so why am I breaking down these definitions so hard? Because it's important. I feel it's super important in 2024. The media is robbing us of our language. It's important to reiterate what these words mean. Because here's the thing, right here, shame. Our culture tries to shame you for shaming others. They're trying to make you feel that it's a wrong and foolish behavior to call out wrong and foolish behavior. Let's look into this a little bit deeper. We got respect here, a feeling of deep admiration, but we're gonna okay, deep admiration for someone or something elicited by their abilities, qualities, or achievements. Now let's stop right there. You folks may have heard the old saying, respect is earned, not given, right? But you've also heard sort of more of a liberal thought behind respect, and that you should respect all women or you should respect all living creatures, right? That there's a certain level of quote unquote respect that is inherent from compassionate being to compassionate being. Now, I could get into the whole animal kingdom, evolution, battles to the death, to be the fittest of the tribe, to reproduce with the most powerful genes of the tribe, right? But ultimately, we're supposed to be a civilized race. We're supposed to be a little bit more humane than the animal kingdom, right? We're not supposed to necessarily be predators preying on the weak. And so the lefties have a point. The lefties have a point. There should be a default level of respect for your fellow man. There should be a default level of respect for other creatures. There should be a level of compassion that you have for other life. And I'm not here to preach to you about the Bible, but I think every major religion has certain lessons about compassion and empathy. And these are words thrown around a lot by the far left, compassion and empathy. But I want you to understand, we live in Orwellian times, where language is used to abuse the very concepts that they are talking about. So let's jump down to number 2 here. Here's the most important one here for what I'm talking about. Due regard for feelings, wishes, rights, or traditions of others. That's respect. And then their example is young people's lack of respect for their parents. The parents, there's not a default amount of respect that you can earn for having sexual activity and reproducing offspring. Uh, Bear with me just one moment. I'm going to mute this camera real quick, or mute this microphone real quick and shut my office door. Got some background noise I don't want to pick up here on the mic. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. I'm doing a lot of background here. I'm doing a lot of building, world building here. But you folks understand these concepts. These anyone in my audience and anyone stumbling across my channel can understand uh, 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 shame, respect, and dignity. Sorry, had a brain fart there for a minute. Okay, and then opposite of respect, you have contempt. The feeling that a person or a thing is beneath consideration, worthless, or deserving scorn. He showed contempt for his job by doing it very badly. Now, this is important because to me, these are antonyms, right? You have respect and contempt. And so everything I said before about having respect for your fellow being, respect for your fellow human, well, you have to understand that we have a lot of people in our society, right, who act very shameful, who behave in certain ways where they show they don't respect themselves. They show outright contempt for their humanity and their contempt for your nobility, contempt for your dignity. We have a whole segment of people who, through media division tactics, and we're going to be getting into a lot of the media division tactics from racism, sexism, et cetera, et cetera. And look, we all fall into these traps, right? We all fall into our tribal groups. I'm just as guilty as anyone else of that. The whole quote unquote, everyone is racist. But, and so, yeah, I may do a future video on the ways in which the media and society try to divide us. But the number of people who fall into those traps and who will speak out of both sides of their mouth and say, we should respect our fellow man. And then 10 minutes later, oh, these are just straight, white, rich old men running the whole show. Yeah, well, who did you vote for? All right, let me bring this back down. I brought myself down. Okay, now that we've looked at these basic definitions, I want to talk about me in high school. I was a little bit of a class clown. I'm not going to lie. I was a little bit of a class clown. And so a lot of this stream is talking about inappropriate behavior. Inappropriate behavior. Now, none of us are saints, right? None of us are Jesus Christ. None of us are perfect. Sangline 86, woe unto those that call good evil and evil good. Okay, yeah, but that's just it. They don't use those terms. They don't use the terms good and evil. They have found new ways to Orwellify the language. I have no idea what that lady is doing in the kitchen. But anyway, so back to me in high school. I was a bit of a class clown. None of us are saints, right? We all are guilty of some little guilty pleasure, guilty behavior, or we've all made the mistake of saying the wrong thing at the wrong time, or doing the wrong thing at the wrong time, or talking shit about somebody, and then you turn around, oh shit, they're right there, right? We've all done these things. We've all had faux pas where we haven't been the most respectable versions of ourselves. Well, for me, I was fucking off in high school one day. I forget what I was doing. I think I may have been just cutting out pieces of paper that looked like in the shape of sexual organs or something. Uh, but I was busted by the substitute teacher. We had a substitute teacher at the time. I was busted by the substitute teacher, and the substitute teacher made me finish my work because the substitute teacher had known me before and knew I could finish the work before anyone else. And then after finishing the work, gave me 15 minutes free time, gave everyone else 15 minutes of fuck off time. But my quote unquote free time, I had to look up the definition of this word that I'm about to show you. Um, because I'd never heard it before. I was in high school and had never heard this word before. And the teacher said, this is what you are. And I want you to look it up. And I want you to write 2 paragraphs, or maybe it was 5 paragraphs. Anyway, I had to write some paper on how now I understand what this is, and now I understand the impact that being this kind of person has on a learning environment and my fellow students. So let me bring this up here. Uncouth. Of a person or of their appearance or behavior, lacking good manners, refinement, or grace. He is unwashed, uncouth, and drunk most of the time. And then similar, lacking of sophistication or delicacy, a place of uncomfortable, especially because of remoteness or poor conditions. So we're not worried about that. But lacking good manners, refinement, or grace. Look at the culture around us. Look at the behaviors that are presented on evening television. Look at the behaviors being, there was a time, and again, I'm not saying let's all go back to the 1950s, right? Oh, we got TMF Squid over in the chat. Orwell saw it all coming with a rough draft of how society descends into communism and general evil. Redefining the words and government spying through your TV was right. Same with the never-ending war. Yeah. And we got Demon's Wrath saying, uncouth, that ain't me, not by a long stretch. Well, that was me. That was me in high school. So what I'd like to do is fast forward in time. I am in my, not today, but back when I was in my 30s, right? I joined some political affiliated organizations, multiple political affiliated organizations. And I got to meet a lot of politicians. And I got to meet a lot of like bikers and lawyers and other uncouth people like myself, right? You see me now, I have long hair. At the time, I was actually pretty clean cut. I had no beard, short hair. But a lot of my friends were still long haired hippies, right? A lot of my friends were still scruffy looking nerf herders. Team F Squid says, a lot of us were uncouth in our youth, or uncouth is a lot of us when we were in our youth. Yeah. And then Sanglant says, if anyone is TV shopping, you can still buy TVs that don't have built in computers, i.e., a commercial display or a monitor. Yeah. The problem with that, Sanglant, is they tend to be more expensive because they don't have all the added advertising built in that was already paid for. And we got Still Life over on YouTube saying, dang hippie. And Demon's Wrath says, in my youth, I would have called myself a cunt. Uncouth is too mild for the descriptor, if you'll pardon the name drop. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, definitely being a cunt, being a ruffian, what's the British, being a mad lad or whatever. There are lots of terminology you can use to describe this kind of person or this kind of behavior. But anyway, the point of my story is in my 30s. So I'm meeting all these clean-cut politicians, guys in business suits, lawyers, people testifying in committee hearings. And I get to shake hands with a lot of people, and I got to kind of hobnob behind the scenes at some political events and meet these politicians. And one of the things they told me was, dear God, some of you loudmouth hippie kind of people are uh, a lot more honest and a lot more straightforward than a lot of these guys in suits. We need more people like y'all in politics. I mean, obviously, the person said it to one of my friends, not to me. So it's like, on the one hand, we have the stereotype of what manners, refinement, and grace is and is supposed to be. And then we have what's tend to be displayed to us and what kind of our gut feeling is. And our gut feeling is not always right about these things. But that's okay. That's okay. We're still learning as a society. Anyway, so let's get on with the actual presentation here. Let me bring this down just to make sure I forgot what was on the next. Okay, so I'm going to bring that down. Where was my other window? Here it is. Let's bring this up because I want to show just a couple examples. A couple examples of what the hell? Of shameful behavior. And this is an old clip. This is a really old clip. This is a really old clip, but I think I found it important to this conversation when I stumbled across it on this Internet Hall of Fame Twitter feed. We're going to listen to this person. We're going to listen to this behavior, and we're going to judge this behavior a little bit.
It doesn't really matter how much money you make or how much money you have. That's really the thing, because I'm not asking you for a large financial contribution. If it costs $20 to sub, $20 is quite a bit of money. $20 is you can get a full meal for $20. And the difference of $20 and eating a meal is in that $20. Like, that's where it is.
Oh, Demon's Wrath said, yeah, this inspired Nick Ricada to do that thought stream. Yeah, I kind of forgot about that, but yeah. Well, this is this person talking about money, begging for money. And we're going to get into begging here in a minute.
But a sub is $5. At maximum, in whatever your currency is, it's maybe $10. And it doesn't matter how broke you are. If you have time to watch Twitch, you have $10, truly. If you don't have $10, you probably don't have time to watch Twitch because you should be working.
Okay, so I'm going to stop her right there because that's pretty much all we need to hear from her. Let me bring her off the screen for just a moment and just say, last night's show, I did this whole rant about this controversy with Ben Shapiro kind of running his mouth about retirement and how nobody should retire at age 65. And here you have another individual saying, well, you shouldn't be on the internet if you don't have $10 to subscribe to me, right? And again, these people are making judgments, right? They're making judgments. But they're also being uncouth. They're being uncouth. They're not reading the room. They're not being polite, empathetic, compassionate to the community that they've either built or are a part of. Right? They're not reading the room. Right? They're demanding a certain level of respect to themselves that they are not presenting to others. Right? They have no dignity. Which brings me up a little to the LGBTQ plus AI $ movement, right? They use this word pride. And I've went on rants about the word pride on my program before. I'm not going to rehash a lot of that. But again, There's a basic level of respect and compassion we should all have for one another as human beings. There's also people who demand a certain level of respect or pride within themselves that they haven't earned. Now, if you ask the LGBTQ plus AI MSNBC movement, they would say we earned it from living through decades of oppression by the straights and the Christians and et cetera, the straight white males of society, the patriarchy. You know, that's the intersectional feminist argument here. Yes, still life. Pride equals shame, war equals peace, freedom equals slavery. Yes. These concepts are important. Getting it right is important because just handing out compassion, dignity to people who show none for themselves, show none for their fellow human being, creates a society in which there are no consequences. Right? Let's do this. This guy's mom is little kid's mom is twerking on some guy in front of their whole family. Again, this is another old video. But twerking. Guy's mom in front of her kids, her family in a public setting, just grinding on some dude, just rubbing her ass all over his cock. Everyone, look, let me bring that back up. Everyone is dressed formal. This is a formal event. Now, granted, the music would say that it's not very formal, right? But this is a formal event. This is somebody's celebration. Maybe it's her celebration. I don't know. But the idea that you're going to do that in front of your children shows you have no respect for your children. The idea that you're going to do that in front of other family members, in front of other adults, you're going to do that in a crowded room full of people. Now, it's one thing if you're doing it at the club or the strip club, and again, those have their own little shame to them. But to do it at a party, shows you have no self-respect, shows you have no empathy for those who have to view you doing that stuff. You know, I had a long conversation on a date one time about sexual behavior, public nudity. And it's like ultimately, you know, if you're a feminist, which this person claimed to be, public nudity is violating the consent of anyone who is randomly walking around in public. It's showing contempt and disrespect for the other people in public to behave the way you behave in public. When you're doing degenerate shit, when you're doing disrespectful shit in public. I cannot drive through a major city in the United States. You know, there's definitely suburbs, but you can't really drive through a major city in the United States without seeing panhandlers, without seeing beggars. And definitely, we have a homelessness crisis in this country, and I've ranted endlessly about the homelessness crisis in this country. But the tactics, the aggressive panhandling that's happening, we'll get into that here in a minute too. All right, let's do one more here. Let's check out this video again. I don't know how old this video is. I don't really know where it came from. This, I guess, is at Speedy Mormon on TikTok. Let's listen to this guy's story here.
I ain't gonna lie, I would rather jump before I ask somebody. No invite? That's crazy to me. Like, I can put my pride to the side, but not that far. That's sick. Asking a question that you already know the answer to is wild. So let me ask a question I don't know the answer to. Why won't you leave me the hell alone? Here's what I'm proposing.
Okay, so what he's talking about, obviously, is someone invited someone else to a party, and a third person who wasn't invited got offended by that, took it personal, and confronted the party planner person and said, "What? No invite?" Okay, so I purposefully included this one because it's again, it's one of these where, yeah, it's uncouth, but it's like it's kind of understandable. We've all been there. We've all had a fear of missing out. We've all felt a little left out. Still Life says, I saw that plot on I Love Lucy. Yes. PP cocaine video. All right. Lucy snuck on the show. Yeah. Yeah, but that's just it. It's how people react to adversity that ultimately determine who we are. Or adversity. Did I say diversity or adversity? Adversity. How we react to adversity determines who we are really. Because when everything's going our way, right? When we're wealthy in good luck and good times, we're not our worst selves. At least not all of us. Some people can be pretty big jerks when they're getting everything they want. But a lot of us, we're able to be good people. And again, I'm kind of getting off topic here. Let's see. Let's go back to the presentation. Oh, nope, not quite yet. There's one more video I want to put up. One more video, one more example of poor behavior. This went viral a couple weeks ago. I want to show this, or a couple months ago, rather. And we talked a little bit about this on the show. But this is a tweet. Smoking on the mountain well, this isn't the same video, I don't think. Maybe it is. Smoking on the mountain thinking how cool white people are for leaving all this free ski gear out for me. Okay. Okay, this isn't the video I was talking about actually, but it's similar. There was another video where a guy, you know, showed how like there was dozens of white people around and they were literally just throwing their gear on the ground and walking away, and he's like, "Wow, it's weird how white people do that." Well, there's a reason. There's a reason that a ski slope is different, has sort of different rules than some other areas of the world. Window. Here we go. And that's because, okay, so here's from Wikipedia. We got a few Wikipedia slides here I want to kind of talk about. We got high trust and low trust societies. Now, these aren't just societies. These could be neighborhoods. These could be different environments. It doesn't always have to be societies. It's just high and low trust areas. People behave differently when there's kind of an unwritten understanding between people that we are going to behave respectfully to each other. We are going to behave in a way where we can trust each other, where we can understand each other, where we're not trying to get one up on each other. And yes, still life. If you try to steal people's skis, you're going to catch a beating. Yeah, probably more than one. Because everyone out there understands how expensive ski gear is and will join forces to wreck your ass. I bring this up because I'm going to be honest with you folks. I've had like 2 hours of sleep today. I had 2 hours of sleep last night. After my show, I ate dinner, I took a shower. I spent a little time with my lady and went to bed. And about an hour and a half later, my dog started barking. And I consider my neighborhood pretty okay. I consider myself living far enough away from any city that I feel safe. But my dog was barking. I looked out my window, and what did I see? I thought I would see like birds flying from the canopies over my house. Like sometimes they like to nest up in there and make a bunch of noise. Sometimes a random stray cat in the neighborhood will just sit on my porch and meow, meow, meow until my dog just goes insane and starts barking at the window. But when I looked out the window, I did not see a bird, cat, or a raccoon. What I saw was a car driving up my street very slowly, and a young male jogging beside the car. And this young male jogs up to the car of my neighbor across the street from my house and starts jerking on all of the doors trying to get them open. And when he's unsuccessful with that car, the car keeps driving further up the street. He jogs up to the next car and is still pulling on the doors of the vehicles of my neighbors. I proceeded to lay in bed for the next 4 hours, angry, seething. And I thought about the fact that I had planned to do this show. And I didn't really want to include this story in this show, but it's like it changes a person's behavior. I moved from a neighborhood in the big city to where I've had bikes stolen off my front porch. Uh, I've had family visit me and their cars get broken into, and so then I felt bad. I had Amazon tell me they were going to stop delivering to my house because all of my packages were getting stolen before I could get to them. I moved. I moved far from the city, and my life, my patience, my compassion for other people have dramatically improved until last night. I realize I got to go back to living to where I'm living in a low trust society. Now, granted, I also know that enough of my neighbors are armed. And look, if I had opened the door, I probably either could have gotten shot or they would have just sped off anyway. You know, I could have tried to play vigilante and do something about it. I could have called the cops, but the last thing I want is the cops at my house at 2 o'clock in the morning. They probably wouldn't have got here till 4:30 anyway, and I would have had to start getting ready for work shortly after that. So what do you do? What do you do? The best thing you could do is protect yourself, arm yourself, plant cameras all over the place. But it's this get mines, right? It's I will get mine, damn you for having yours. And let me use that to tell you another story. About 2 years ago, uh, I was in an environment. I'm not going to say where this happened, but I was in an environment where another person. It was kind of a semi-public place where I was interacting with other folks, right? And there was a candy dish. There's a candy dish at a desk. I saw somebody take a couple pieces of candy. I took a couple pieces of candy. Blah blah blah. Right. A couple weeks go by. I notice the candy dish is empty. And the person who sits at the desk was like, "Hey, sorry about that. Here, let me go ahead and fill this up. You want a piece of candy?" And offered me a piece of candy. I'm like, "Cool, cool." Yeah, I kind of felt Like, hey, that's a cool thing, right? That's a cool thing. Offering a little dish of candy for people who just randomly stop by your desk. That's kind of cool. It's kind of like the gas stations, take a penny, leave a penny thing, right? But it's on the understanding that, yeah, there's going to be once in a blue moon someone who's not going to want their penny. And again, you can go back. I did a stream called I think it was called the asshole test, where I talked about, well, if everyone's an asshole, then none of these things work. Well, I decided to be a really nice guy and buy a giant bag of candy and fill up this person's candy dish, like heaping. Before I could walk away, I saw another individual walk up to the candy dish, open a piece of candy, put it in their mouth, then take their hand, do this, like straight up claw, straight up giant handful of candy, put it right in their pocket, and then did it again, put it in their other pocket, and walked off. And my first thought was, does this person have no dignity? They literally just did it in front of 5 of us. And I actually, me being an asshole, I was like, hey, is that going to be your lunch? And the person was like, what do you mean? It's like, hey, is that gonna be your lunch? You took a lot of candy there. I mean, that's a lot of calories. Is that gonna be your whole lunch? The person said, hey, it's free. If they don't want it to be free, they shouldn't have put it out there. So yeah, there was this whole mentality of, I'm gonna just take because I can. Because I have no dignity, no shame, no respect. Therefore, I have contempt for the system. The system. Ladies and gentlemen, 2 weeks later, there was no candy dish. No more candy dish. Still Life says, I set out 2 pounds of gummy bears outside on Halloween and watched from the attic to see if any of my neighbors were shit, and they all passed the test. Yeah. What the hell? Oh, bring this back up. Yeah, high trust and low trust societies. Okay, high trust society is defined as one in which interpersonal trust is relatively low and which do not have shared ethic values. Conversely, a high trust society is one where interpersonal trust is relatively high and where ethical values are strongly shared. According to research, low trust societies are typically kinship based. Racists? I'm just kidding. Outcomes of low trust societies can include difficulty in forming and maintaining corporate structures. Mechanisms and institutions that are corrupted, dysfunctional, or absent in low trust societies include respect for private property, a trusted court system, democratic voting and acceptance of electoral outcomes, and voluntary tax payment. Research has identified a correlation between linear active cultures with high trust societies and multi active cultures, schedules with many tasks at once, with low trust cultures. Demon's Wrath says, counterpoint, if you're taking from a small company, you're effectively taking from a person. If you're taking from a giant corporation, you ain't screwing anyone. But that, to some degree, Demon's Wrath. Okay. But let's think about this for just a moment. Lessons are always learned, right? And the bigger the corporation, the bigger the entity, the bigger the lesson. If one person's taking from a candy dish, if one person's taking 5 pieces of candy from a candy dish, let's say, take a penny, leave a penny. Well, you have one person that's taking 5 pennies. Well, as long as you have 100 people leaving a penny, it's a drop in the water. But what if everyone's taking pennies and nobody's leaving pennies? Well, then there's no pool left. There's nothing left. So when you say taking from a giant corporation ain't screwing anyone. No, it's screwing everyone just a little bit. For every single person that takes it, they screw everyone else just a little bit. For example, you know, look at all of the drugstores in California that are either moving out of neighborhoods where people need a pharmacy because the crime is happening, because they are losing so much money in theft that they just simply can't operate between the theft losses and having to pay security and having to deal with the turnover in personnel and having to lock up everything and having to transform their business model for high crime areas. Eventually, if you're taking from a giant corporation, that corporation is going to realize how much they're really losing, and those communities will no longer be served by that quote unquote giant corporation. Now, again, there are a lot of people who are like, well, good then. I don't think that's always a good thing. I don't think, I'm not a person who has so much envy for the super elite, the super rich, and the corporate structures that I'm like, well, it'd be a good thing if they all just disappeared. No, I'm a libertarian. I believe in free markets. I think the way we do that is to get rid of the government betting on winners and losers. Okay, let's see. He says, remember seeing these day in the life videos from Google employees in San Fran, wake up, go to work, get free. Okay, now, again, you're talking about people who aren't contributing anything to society. These are the people who, this is a different aspect of corporate culture, right? These aren't the uncouth people doing outright theft. They're literally being handed, they're being gifted what they're doing, right? This isn't theft. This isn't low trust. This is what happens when high trust goes too far and you have essentially a lazy society. Yeah. And then Still Life says all companies can write off all theft as a tax deduction. It's called shrink ratio. Okay, but again, how many times do we have to hear Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden rant about how corporations don't pay enough taxes? It's all got to come. All of it winds up hurting the middle class in one way or another. Yes, the corporate version of hush money. Yeah, there was trust in those relationships. So let me do this. Let's see. What was my next Wikipedia? Oh, okay. Okay, that's okay. Hang on. We're not quite ready for that yet. Or maybe we are. Maybe we are. Okay, cuz again, the concept is trust. The concept is behaving in a way that's understood. I mean, we have these unwritten contracts between people. So let's go to slut shaming. Slut shaming is the practice of criticizing people, especially women and girls. Thank you, Wikipedia, for the sexism, who are perceived to violate expectations of behavior and appearance regarding issues related to sexuality. Okay, so here's my question. Why are these things perceived and why are these things expected? Oh, because they're doing it in a community of other people who are affected by such things. Now, granted, there's definitely a degree of this that goes too far. I'm not saying there's not. The term is used to reclaim the word slut and empower women and girls to have agency over their own sexuality. If you think other people's words take away your agency to do something, but your words somehow don't affect your words, like slut shaming, your these terms you come up with aren't, oh, no, they don't affect society in a negative way. People, pay real close attention to the languages that they're using. They are, again, They're using shame in a negative context. Gender-based violence can be a result of slut shaming, primarily affecting women. Oh, I love that word can, right? The word can here, the word can here is doing just as much work as the comma in Skip Bayless's tweet yesterday where he's like, all in my ass. He's talking about the Dallas Cowboys going all in on a Super Bowl run, and he says all in, comma, my ass. Yeah, the word can here is doing the kind of work that comma did. Yeah, violence can be a result of slut shaming. Usually it's not. It may, oh, here we go, may. We got can, we got may also be used in reference to gay men who may face disapproval for promiscuous sexual behaviors. Slut shaming rarely happens to heterosexual men. Really? Really? I got a Gillette ad. I got a Gillette ad that would beg to differ. Examples of slut shaming include being criticized or punished for violating dress code policies by dressing in sexually provocative ways. Now, you've heard me on this show before say the word provocative means to provoke. If you're provoking someone else, you don't get to choose how they receive and react to your provoking of them. Still Life says third wave feminism is anti-female. Yeah. Requesting access to birth control. Well, again, you have the uber religious, and that's somewhat understandable. But, the rest of society, hey, we want you to take birth control. We want you to quit spitting out bastard children, having premarital, extramarital. So here, that was me just now, shaming people for having casual and promiscuous sex. Could also include being victim blamed for being raped. Well, once again, on this show, you've heard me address this victim blaming term. There's a difference between blame and responsibility, folks. The people who write things like this want you to think blame and responsibility are the same thing. You are responsible for your own safety. If someone then comes and violates your safety, they are to blame. But you are responsible for your own safety. So this being victim blamed for being graped, no. You're being victim responsible. This what was she wearing? I personally don't think that in a crime investigation it has much place, but in a how to prevent it from happening in the future, yeah, there might be a little bit of conversation on what can we do to prevent it. But again, you're not allowed to ask people to have a little bit of dignity and not provoke other people. Okay, what do we have here? Okay, so here we have aggressive panhandling. Aggressive panhandling is a legal term for unlawful forms of public begging. Now, we just saw an example of that. What was that, Amaranth, I think, in that video? Telling people that they were, they shouldn't be on the internet unless they could bring her $10. Right? Proponents of such legislation advocate placing limits on these activities. Some opponents believe statutes prohibiting aggressive panhandling are part of the criminalization of homelessness and argue that such laws are discriminatory or unevenly enforced. I'm not sure. Sanglet, the UK version of coupling was really funny and all too true. I have no idea what coupling is. Demon's Wrath does. I have no idea what this is. In general, aggressive panhandling is a solicitation made in person for an immediate donation of money or other gratuity. This may be done by vocal appeal, asking, requesting, coercing, badgering, sympathy appeals, harassment, threats, or demands, or by non vocal appeal, usage of signs or other signals, gestures, postures, children, animals, props. It is a habitual, manipulative, coercive, or intimidative use of another individual's sympathy, fear, guilt, or insecurity for monetary gain. Now let's think about that. Another individual's sympathy, fear, guilt, or insecurity. These are emotions. This is essentially emotional blackmail. You know, this is use of the compassion and empathy we were talking about at the beginning of the show. The use of compassion and empathy for your fellow man, respect for your fellow human being, to apply your contempt for them. And again, the get mines, right? The idea that you're going to take all the pennies out of the jar. You're going to take all the candy out of the dish. Because you're going to prey on their sympathy, but you have none for them. You have no empathy for your fellow man. And again, so here we go. Okay, we're going to jump back up here and read this part again. Some opponents believe statutes prohibiting aggressive panhandling are part of the criminalization of homelessness and argue that such laws are discriminatory or unevenly enforced. You know, folks, you got to be careful saying things like this, but our different communities are just going to have different statistics. And as such, different communities are going to be treated differently. Criminalization of homelessness, well, as I've mentioned here before on the show, there are a lot of empathetic, compassionate organizations out there trying to do their damnedest to make a dent in the homelessness. Part of the problem is you have, I'm assuming I don't know what the statistics are, but you have a large number of our homeless population that are immigrants. You have another large portion that are veterans or other folks within our society who have just fallen off of society due to physical or mental illness. And then you have other people who just kind of just said fuck you to society. And they're hooked on alcohol and drugs and no amount of helping those people. Still Life says there's 4 types of control: physical, emotional, monetary, and psychological. And this is all of them right here, aggressive panhandling. And really a lot of the other concepts we've been talking about institute multiple of these. Uh-oh. Sorry, my job was calling me there. Yeah, that was the NES Batman music. So, all right. Let me bring this down off the screen and see what's next here on the slideshow. Okay, yeah. This goes back. Academia's Rest says, I can't help but think of the number one commonality with homeless people has to be the mental issues. Yeah. Cheers and welcome to Apocryphal World Records. Cheers. Good seeing you again, AWR. Yeah, the mental issues thing, because again, most people, when they hit rock bottom, it hits home. And they have the dignity we were talking about earlier. They have the dignity and the respect and the pride for themselves to want to be a better person. They have they want to provide. They want to be able to be empathetic and compassionate to their community and not take from it. It takes mental illness to lose that, to lose that dignity and respect in oneself, to want to give the big middle finger to everyone. Okay. So let's look at this. Okay, so this goes back to the feminist shit we were looking at earlier. Empower. This also could apply to the homelessness issue. Give someone the authority or power to do something. Now, again, if you're homeless, you could feel pretty fucking powerless. Pretty fucking powerless to change what you're doing. And that powerlessness, again, can lead to the fuck you mentality, can lead to the, well, I'm just going to take what I can then. Survival instinct kicks in. You empower yourself to some degree, because then it becomes survival against the survival of the fittest. But then you also have the feminists who say, to shame is to remove power. And the opposite would to be then to empower people to make the decision they want to make. Well, to give somebody the power to do something. Well, I would argue that shaming them doesn't take away their power to do it. They still have the power to do it. You still have free will as a human being, and you still have the freedom under our laws to dress the way you want, to act the way you want, as long as it does not harm other people or, break laws on violence or property. Okay, okay, yeah, that's the last slide. All right. Now we're going to get into a little bit. I've got 3 links here from Psychology Today about this concept of empowerment and shame, and again, my thoughts on this whole thing is, okay, well, if we're not supposed to make people feel embarrassed for behaving badly, if we're not supposed to make people feel like there's a different way, Still Life says encourage. Yes. Empower is essentially encouragement to some degree. And Demons Wrath says theory shaming prostitutes is a safety mechanism to protect ourselves from STDs before we had the theory of germs and viruses. Yep. And think of 18th century and prior depictions of common whores that ain't pretty. Yeah. But instead, no, it's shaming. And okay, so here's an article from 2023. And again, we're looking at this Psychology Today website. I just kind of clicked it because if you type these terms into Google, this is one of the first links you're going to get. And I think it's important that we go with like these top sources. Shaming is an aggressive act. Shaming can guide us towards social norms or impair our self-worth. Shame is a self-conscious emotion that can be a positive motivation or motivator to follow social norms. Hey, you could have stopped the article right there. You could have stopped the article right there. See, this is the problem. This is the problem with these education types, these trust the science types, is you kind of you when you write these types of articles, you kind of try to sum everything up in the first paragraph. This person just gave away the big secret in the first fucking sentence. And then the big heavy lifting of the word however, all too often, internalized shame can be intensely emotionally debilitating. Yes, it can be. But again, one of the issues of being a human being with free will Apocryphal World Record says, does it seem like theories like germ theory is more effective than the shaming? I mean, I think they work hand in hand. I think you could have all the germ theory you want, but unless you have a way to do something about the germs, do something about people's interacting with the germs, I mean, not really a whole lot you can do about it then, right? It can involve degrading, humiliating, insulting, embarrassing, and even dehumanizing another person or group. Yes, Consequently, shaming can be viewed as an aggressive act that violates the human spirit, leading to feelings of being flawed, inadequate, or damaged. Okay, so this person goes on to talk about parents and teachers and other authority figures and bullying and impact and blah, 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 right? We're going to ignore all that because, like I said, a lot of things can be summed up in the first paragraph, and that's what we're going to look at here. Right here, shaming can be viewed as an aggressive act, okay, but not necessarily. And here's the $1 million question I would have for Bernard Golden, PhD. If a behavior is harmful to themselves or the community around them, shouldn't they have already been ashamed before they participated in the behavior? And if a person has participated in a behavior that is detrimental to themselves or their community, wouldn't a proper response be to at least attempt to invoke that embarrassment? And I would disagree with your use of the term dehumanizing right here, because I think it's a very human thing to socialize and to make each other understand. Still Life says embarrassment is internal, shaming is external. Yes, that's exactly the point I'm trying to make. But you have to shame someone, right? It's kind of like a child seeing a stove for the first time. They don't know what fire is until they touch it. People who are acting out aren't going to be embarrassed unless they understand the context of why they would be embarrassed. Unless they understand why an act would be shameful or uncouth. So when someone does something that makes us go, whoa, dude, our first reaction as social creatures is to just assume maybe they didn't know better. And then you kind of rib the person. You kind of joke with them. You kind of be like, "Hey, that's fucked up, man." And you got to kind of shame them. "Hey, why are your titties all out on Facebook? You know Facebook don't allow nipples, girlfriend." You kind of have to shame them when they've went too far for the community that they're in. Okay, so again, I said I'd ask Bernard Golden, well, what are we supposed to do instead? Well, let's check this out. Also from Psychology Today. This is from Robert W. Firestone. You don't really want to get better. Most people fear a basic change in their identity, be it positive or negative. And here we go. Of course, psychotherapy clients want relief from their symptoms, depression, anxiety, and other painful emotions, but at the same time, they don't want to change the fundamental defenses that would allow them to develop and overcome their psychological maladies. Most people fear a basic change in their identity, be it positive or negative. Again, he goes on to talk about children and their parents and how these interactions with other people develop, and how these people kind of hang on to their coping mechanisms. And then in the end, he says it's valuable for therapist and client to face the fact that in an important sense, the client does not want to get better. Okay. So ultimately, a person could be just such an asshole, so crazy, and so, set in their fucking ways that, I guess there's not really a whole lot you can do about it. And also, from Psychology Today, let's look at this third article. What do you do when nobody wants to do anything about it? When someone refuses treatment? What do you do when you see a need but feel unable to help? When someone you love refuses to get professional treatment for their mental health disorder, such as depression, bipolar disorder, substance abuse. And then, for the sake of this stream, let's expand that. right? To self-destructive behavior, to community destructive behavior, to thoughterly, to begging, to being an asshole. This can put you as a family member or another member of the public in a very uncomfortable and difficult position. You care for the person, have empathy for the person, I'll add, and can see that he or she needs help but feel powerless and unable to just stand by. You cannot force anyone over the age of 18 into treatment unless they pose a danger to themselves or others or show signs of psychotic thinking, which is not very common. What can you do? You might begin by spelling out for your loved one that what you observe in her. I love that. Oh, we got the her pronoun. Common areas of concern are alterations in appearance, decreased level of energy, fatigue, lack of interest in previously enjoyed people or activities, changes in sleep, appetite, or weight, negative thoughts. So this is mostly for, mental illness setting in for the first time. If your loved one refuses to move forward, it's useful to try to understand what is behind his reasons. Okay, so first it was a her, now it's his. His reason for refusing treatment. This is very sexist. And then address those issues. A person may refuse to accept mental health treatment for any reasons, including he may believe it indicates he is a failure. It may make him feel more vulnerable. He may be concerned about paying for treatment. He may feel a loss of privacy. Oh, looky here. He may have a fear of stigma, particularly if friends or coworkers find out. He may believe treatment is not effective, at least not for him. He may fear becoming dependent on medication or the side effects. May be concerned that treatment, particularly talk therapy, may raise up strong emotion that he fears having to deal with. Okay. So again, assuming that if we can't shame bad behavior, right? If we can't shame bad behavior because it's an aggressive act, well then our options are, let them just act out until they commit crimes and then you can have them committed, or you could just try to gently talk them into seeking treatment. Folks, these people are dumb. These people are dumb. When people are behaving like shit, you can't empower it. You can't enable it. You have to do something. You have to fight against it. Or you have to extricate yourself from the situation. But this is the problem. Just like me moving from one side of the Kansas City area to deep into Kansas on the other side, I moved away from a lot of my problem with other people, but other people still exist and other people are finding their way into my community. Other people have a way of just being shitty people. The enabling and empowering and the compassion is not working. So, what do we do? I would advocate, I would advocate we as a society, we as a society go back to allowing a little bit of shame and a little bit of dignity in our society. It's the only way we can save it. It is quite literally the only way from. And again, one of the things I mentioned on my show last night. Let me back up 1 second. One of the things I mentioned on my show last night, I made a little joke that the internet is now just grifters, trolls, thirst traps, and what was the fourth one? Shit posters. You know, we've lost our ability to have dignity. Even the people who are feeding us valuable information are doing it through thirst traps, shit posts. They're doing it through scams. They're doing it through psyops. They don't have dignity. They're just trying to get the clicks. Or like I said, they're trying to troll and shit post and just make you laugh, which is better than the other three. I'll have to say, if that's what's left of the internet is shit posting, I try to have a little more dignity, just a little bit more dignity on my show. I'm not going to beg you for money. I'm going to beg you to take the things that we learn together on this show and advance them in your daily life. Keep your head up. Because as bad as society seems, as bad as our culture seems, the more people who understand what words mean, the more people who understand that our media and our culture lies to us about what the solutions to our problems are, and the more our culture accepts disrespectful behavior, contempt for the average human, the more people who get it, the more people like you folks in my chat, the more people who get it, the better off we're going to be 10, 15 years from now, because we've got to wake ourselves up from the Orwellian nightmare. And you can do it. You folks can do it by shutting this shit down. Whenever someone uses the term slut shaming around you, you now have a counter. I wouldn't slut shame if they had dignity. I wouldn't slut shame if they had responsibility. I wouldn't slut shame. I wouldn't fat shame if they had dignity. I wouldn't poor shame, right? If they weren't acting uncouth. I have compassion and love for every person, including homeless people, unless and until they start showing contempt and disrespect for the environment around them. One of the things I like to preach is the campfire rule. If you're going into a place that you don't own, and even places you do own, right? Wherever you are in society, you walk onto a property, you walk onto a piece of land, leave that piece of land as good or better than you found it. If you go into a business looking to get one up on the owner, if you're stealing, you're not leaving it better than you found it. If you're shaking your ass, you're not leaving it better than you found it. If you're causing a disruption, you're not leaving it better than you found it. Have some dignity, have some respect. And ultimately, Demon's Wrath says, "Hey, wait, Mild, I have a question pertaining to culture for you." I sure shoot, man. I'm open for questions. I was just about to wrap up the show, but we got time. We got time to chit chat. I'm not in a big hurry. We're almost an hour and a half in. I don't. If there's a way I could expand upon these without just repeating myself and going off on this and getting further down the Orwellian nightmare that is language, uh, sure. I mean, and I'm willing to go down those things too. But okay. Says if a man is near broke, Brace basically ain't got much, living from paycheck to paycheck, but he wants to front and buy an expensive car and big shiny rims. Is that uncouth? Um, this is a hard question. I was that man at one point. I didn't have big shiny rims or anything like that, but I did have to ask myself. I was unemployed. I was not getting food stamps or aid. I was living with a friend. I did have a little bit of income coming in from just a side gig, but not enough to pay the rent, not enough to pay bills, not enough to really survive. I was able to scrape by enough to buy myself enough food, and I did during that time period. I went and bought myself a video game. And I felt guilty for doing so. But at the same time, I'm like, Jesus, this is literally the only thing I have to my name that's not clothing and my work boots to go to fucking work. I mean, and again, I didn't have a full-time employment, but I still did go out. I helped paint houses as a side gig. It brought in a little money, but not enough for rent. And I felt guilty. So expensive car and big shiny rims. I would say there's a certain level to that, and I would say expensive car and big shiny rims. Different people have a different definition of what an expensive car is. But if you're talking about a late mod, if I was to go out, sign on the dotted line, and drive off a brand new Mercedes or Lexus, yeah, that's too much. That's a slap in the face, right? That's a slap in the face to anyone who's, and of course, right after I say, Sanglan says, "Don't buy a German car." Okay, I'm gonna bring that back off the screen because, like I said, I'm gonna wrap up here in just a moment. So there's a limit to everything. I think even the most poor person has to have some escape, right? Has to have some kind of something to look forward to. They have to have some kind of earthly possession, some kind of, look at me. I don't consider myself rich, and look at all these comic books I bought. The idea is to have a little discipline, just a little bit of discipline, and be able to make those hobbies and those escapes and those things that you desire, understand that they are luxuries. And when you can't afford luxuries, you kind of got to make the luxuries your own. Pocket for World Record says money management is difficult for many people, and then says desire can be damning. I mean, it depends on what you desire. If you desire the unattainable, yes, it can be damning in a way, but it's also, there's a right way and a wrong way to do anything. Are you if you desire it, are you taking the time to make a plan for obtaining it in a fair, respectful manner with dignity? Or are you trying to get your quick fix? The problem is a lot of people who fall down the drugs, rock and roll, sex, the degenerate lifestyle, you don't always make the right decisions. You're not always making those decisions with a clear head. And you wind up hurting the people around you. You wind up hurting yourself. And again, I'm not here to preach at you. I'm not here to tell you don't drink, don't smoke weed. I'm not telling you not to do these things. I'm not telling you not to have vices, not to have things to look forward to, or things to escape from. We all have those things. Man, I drink so much whiskey. I had to not drink tonight, man, because I had to have my brains with me. Demon's Wrath says, "Dude I worked with was what Shakespeare called a warrior for the working day, except he just worked for a meager paycheck, smoked weed, and spent his money on a hoe with a newborn that wasn't his." Sure. Granted, to me, there's a level of lack of dignity for himself that you know, he's, instead of trying to better himself, he's throwing it at this woman. Just like, if all you got is $10 to your name, definitely don't listen to Amaranth and spend it on her subscription. There's a certain level of self-respect you have to have. And, this was an argument my ex-wife and I kind of got into before we got divorced. You have to respect yourself before you can love one another. You have to love yourself before you can love another. And sometimes it takes a little love from another to love you in order for you to realize how much you can love yourself. It's a tough proposition. And by the way, all of a sudden I'm into these videos from the YouTube channel Ho Math, and he's got a couple good videos on that, trying to love someone, trying to find someone to love and being told, well, just be yourself, and just do this and just be nice and then none of it works and then you're still just lonely. That can really take its fucking toll on people. And so I understand the guy earning a meager paycheck, smoking weed and spending money on a hoe. Sometimes that's what you got to do not to be lonely, to give you the courage to go back to work the next day and you get caught up in this cycle. And I'm not going to judge that guy, but ultimately at some point in time, you got to ask yourself, am I in a healthy spot? And if not, what do I have to change to get healthier? Instead of woe is me, will take you the opposite direction to where you wind up hitting rock bottom. And then Apocryphal World Record says most people think they're respecting themselves. Tough stuff. Yeah. Well, especially all the thoughts on the internet, right? All the whores across the internet showing their body for money, showing their body for clicks and attention that then they could monetize in other ways. Ultimately, we're seeing a little bit of TikToks where there's older women starting to realize the error of their ways. But this is going to explode in 10, 15 years. Women are really going to realize the crisis they created by having no shame and dignity in the way they behaved through this generation. And I'm hoping that at some point they start listening. I'm hoping, again, as much as and so Mike Cernovich today tweeted out something about the whatever podcast. And let me see if I can bring that up, because it's very because I responded to it. I quote tweeted it. And it's very valid to this conversation we're having right now. Here we go. He's talking about the whatever podcast. He says it's humiliation porn. The girls keep their clothes on, but it's the same kink. Incels love this show as they want to see women, quote, be put in their place. Okay. But when you have a generation, and okay, so he's responding to Keemstar, who says this show every episode, you're a whore, your dad doesn't love you, no guy will marry you. I'm a very smart guy because I figured this out. So here's my response to Keemstar and Cernovich. With so much online culture being thirst traps and simping, accountability for immodesty is largely absent from our society. While Mike isn't wrong here, and God, I hate the whatever podcast. I hate hearing those women talk. I hate how basic the conversation always is. It's always about how do you rate yourself? What's your body count? It's the same 10 questions. Keemstar is right when he's like, yeah, it's literally, you could follow a script. Granted, there are some viral clips that are pretty fucking funny, and when they go viral with little clips or when women storm off, it's kind of funny. But watching a whole episode of the whatever podcast and hear the same dumb shit come out of these people's mouths over and over again, yeah, you can't do it. Anyway, so I said, with so much online culture being thirst traps and simping, accountability for immodesty is largely absent from our society. And then I said, while Mike isn't wrong here, Mike Cernovich, for many young men, it's a refreshing, contrasting alternative to what they're inundated with constantly. And yes, we are inundated with uh, immodest women doing immodest things and essentially showing that their sexual choices, if not their full-on mating choices, are going to be peacocking immodest men doing peacocking immodest things, right? Assholes, so to speak. Yes, the only one worth remembering was Gorlock the Destroyer gracing us with his presence. Yes. And remember, he's a 10. A 10. Because we're not lying to ourselves in 2024. A 400-pound transgender is a bad bitch and a 10. And you're not allowed to fat shame him or slut shame him or shame him in any way because he's a 10. Folks, it's time to stop letting these people dictate what kind of language and what kind of behavior we will accept in our lives on a daily basis. With that, I think I've pretty much exhausted everything I have to say on the subject. Hopefully this thing flowed well for you folks in the audience. I don't do it this way very often where I have a whole presentation, and I get that I didn't put everything in a perfect flowing order. And I kind of jumped back and forth between dictionary words and concepts and anecdotal stories and videos, but I definitely hope that you folks at least take something from these Patriot Philosopher streams I do, because that's why I do them. I do them because of language. I do them because I'm sick of this Orwellian shit and us being told what words we can think with and what words we have to think about. And anyway, I'll catch you folks this Saturday, 6 p.m. Central, for the normal Saturday show. It's looking like it might be a banger. I just did a show 24 hours ago, and I've already got like 5 stories queued up for the Saturday show. So it looks like it's going to be a banger. I'm probably going to go long Saturday as well. That's if I don't wind up doing something tomorrow night, which I doubt. I depending on how much sleep I get in the next day and a half, I may try to jump on with Cool Frog over on Cool Frog's channel. He does his open mic Fridays. I may try to jump on there this week, but yeah, this Saturday, 6 p.m. Central, join me. Please join the chat. We've got a lot of people in the chat tonight. Thank you to everyone who showed up in the chat. Sanglant, Apocryphal World Records, Still Life, Demon's Wrath. I know I'm missing somebody. TMF Squid. Yeah, I knew I was missing. All right, so yeah, take just a moment on your way out the door and click that like button. And again, if you're new here, please watch a second video on the channel. Till next time, take care of yourselves. Take care of one another. Outlast the haters and shame them. Don't get any on you. And if you do, rub that shit in real good. See you Saturday. Good night, everybody. Take care.